Okay, wonderful. Over to Matt Pryor, a Consumer Protection Fellow on the Program Administrator team from Energy Solutions. Please go ahead, Matt.
Thank you, Mike. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining today's Illinois Shines Disclosure Form informational webinar. We'll go ahead and get started by introducing today's presenters. Next slide. We're very thankful to be joined today by Julie Hurwitz, the Sector Strategist for Large DG, Jess Blue, the Sector Strategist for Community Solar, and Felicia Lee, our Distributed Energy Resources Product Manager. I'll ask Julie, Jess, and Felicia to introduce themselves more fully when they present today. We're also joined today by Rachel Granneman, who's the Consumer Protection Counsel for the Illinois Power Agency, and Audrey Steinbeck as well from the IPA. Rachel and Audrey will be assisting us with our Q&A at the end of the presentation. Before we review today's agenda, I'd like to share a few housekeeping items. Everyone is going to be muted during the presentation. If you have questions that you'd like to ask during the webinar, please use the Q&A box, which is most helpful for addressing as many questions as quickly as possible. Make sure to press the Q&A button and not the chat box. We will answer as many questions as we can verbally at the end of today's presentation. A video recording of the webinar, presentation slides, and post-webinar Q&A will be published at the program website following the meeting. Today's agenda includes background and disclosure form updates, overview of disclosure form changes, both for distributed generation and community solar, disclosure form portal walkthroughs and PDF reviews, overview of API and CSV functionality, general announcements and reminders, and then finally questions and answers. Let's move on to the background or disclosure form updates. Next slide. By way of background, the program is required that each customer receive and sign a disclosure form before signing their installation contract for distributed generation or subscription contract for community solar. Disclosure forms are intended to provide clear, consistent information to the customer about the program, about their specific offer, and about consumer rights. Further, the standardization of the disclosure form allows consumers to compare multiple offers in an apples-to-apples manner. The 2022 long-term plan previewed the IPA's desire to update and streamline the disclosure forms and included initial samples in Appendix I-2. The desire was to simplify the disclosure forms, reduce their length, improve the presentation, and improve the portal's usability when completing disclosure forms. The agency received feedback during the comment process related to the 2022 long-term plan, and in December 2022, the agency and program administrator facilitated an additional stakeholder feedback process, which included the issuance of proposals, an invitation for public comment, and feedback solicitation during the Consumer Protection Working Group. The agency reviewed and considered all feedback provided and published a rationale document on its website explaining the major changes to the new disclosure forms. For the next part of the presentation, Julie Hurwitz will describe the major changes to the DG disclosure forms, and Jess Blue will describe the major changes to the CS disclosure forms. Over to you, Julie.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Hurwitz. I'm the Large DG Sector Strategist, and I'll be giving an overview of disclosure form changes for distributed generation. So like Matt said, a primary goal in redesigning the disclosure forms was to streamline and shorten the forms, including simplified form navigation, organization, and auto calculations, which you'll see in the portal and in the final PDF. We've also discontinued the over 25 kilowatt disclosure form. So AVs and designees creating disclosure forms for projects over 25 kilowatts should use the appropriate project type form. We've also added the ability to select an option to automatically export the disclosure form in Spanish. We've also changed the DG fees section, and it has been reorganized so that you'll now have the opportunity to enter conditional and non-conditional fees separately. And when presented to the customer, they'll be broken out separately, and non-conditional fees such as maintenance fee or delivery fee will automatically be included in the total cost to customers. So you'll see on the slide, the $4,950 of non-conditional fees has automatically been added to the assumed $50,000 purchase price, and the $500 conditional late payment fee has not been added. We've also added a collateral requirements and possible refund section so that customers can be made aware if they're being impacted by the collateral requirements consistent with the REC contract, and if and when the collateral would be returned to them. If AVs are choosing to withhold a portion of the REC incentive, that would not be included in the total cost of the project. If AVs are choosing to charge a fee for the collateral requirements, that would then be added to the total amount owed by the customer. So you'll see that the collateral type is charge a fee. The amount is $1,000, and that's been added to the total cost that the customer owes. We've also updated the section on net metering and the smart inverter DG rebate, including correcting information about how to apply for net metering, simplifying the information provided, and adding a sentence directing customers to an online resource for more information on net metering. There will also be more information around the smart inverter rebate, which is conditional depending on which utility is selected on the form, and that will include the rebate amount and who keeps the rebate. DG disclosure forms will now incorporate this project performance efficiency graph, which will be created using the project's capacity factor. The goal of this efficiency graph is to explain project performance to customers using an understandable metric and scale. And the portal will auto-calculate the capacity factor for the project using inputs, specifically project size and expected first-year production in kilowatt hours. And the scale is created using typical capacity factors submitted to the Illinois Shines program. Finally, we've updated the savings section so that customers may clearly understand the overall benefits and expenses of their project. The method for calculating estimated value of electricity generated is the total savings over 15 years of the project, which is equivalent to the sum of annual production multiplied by the annual rate, taking degradation and price escalation into account. Keep in mind that due to comments from stakeholders, the disclosure form will also include a statement that projects may continue to generate electricity and economic value beyond 15 years, and Illinois Shines uses assumptions in order to facilitate an apples-to-apples comparison between disclosure forms, but documents provided by a project seller may use different assumptions. Finally, because of the complications of estimating the value of electricity generated by DG projects at commercial and industrial customers and public schools, the value of electricity and savings section will not appear on forms for commercial and industrial customers and for public schools. So what you're seeing here with the benefits would not appear if large commercial, industrial, or public schools is selected as the project type. Okay, I'm now going to pass it over to Jess to give an overview of disclosure form changes for community solar.
Great, thanks, Julie. I'm Jess Blue. I'm the community solar sector strategist. And before I go into the changes for the disclosure form, I'm just going to call out a requirement, and you can go to the next slide, please. That TBD forms for community-driven community solar are prohibited for the 2023-24 program year. And so similar to the DG disclosure forms, the community solar disclosure forms have a simplified form navigation and organization, as well as auto calculations. You can see from the screenshot below that there's clarity on the community solar rate and payment information. And once we go into the portal walkthrough, you'll see that under subscription type, we have options for you to, there's going to be a drop down, and we have options for you to select a subscription type that fits the subscription. And as you can see, it offers just more clarity and everything that would be owed from the subscriber. We've also added an authorization to manage the customer's utility account. So again, if this is applicable, the authorization on the right side of your screen will then show up on the disclosure form. Next slide, please. And then additionally, there's an updated savings section. So this will calculate the estimated bill credits for the first year based on the bill crediting rate, which would be the price to compare for utilities, ComEd and Ameren. From there, the estimated subscription payments will be subtracted as well as the enrollment fees to then give you the estimated total savings for the first year. If a variable rate subscription type is selected, you won't see the first box in the disclosure form. You'll then just see the estimated bill credits for the first year displayed on the disclosure form. And that wraps up the changes for the community solar disclosure form. We're now going to watch 2 explainer videos that walk through the form on the portal. First for distributed generation, and then for community solar. After the videos, Julie and I will then quickly walk through the PDFs for both forms.
Hello, and welcome to this instructional video on completing the Illinois Shines DG System Purchase Disclosure Form version 2. As an approved vendor or designee, you will be filling out this form for each customer looking to purchase a PV system to install on their property and participate in the Illinois Shines program. The disclosure form must be signed prior to the installation. A signed disclosure form is required prior to the submission of a project application to the program. Let's get started by opening up the disclosure form on the portal. To do so, you would toggle to the left-hand side and hit Vendor or Designee, Disclosure Form, and create DG. The first section of the disclosure form asks for general information about the project, including the form type, the project name, and if the generated disclosure form PDF should be exported in Spanish. The vendor ID will be hard-coded in the disclosure form at this point. The form is organized into 10 sections on the portal, and you will be asked to walk through each section before moving on to the next. You can keep track of your progress using the status bars on the right. You will be able to revisit sections and resume progress prior to submitting the form. Required fields are marked with an asterisk, and we have provided helper text in the fields to help guide form entries. If your data validation does not pass, you will need to correct the value before moving on to the next section. Conditional fields will determine the resulting information shown in the disclosure form, which will be presented to the customer. Please consult the guidebook and consumer education materials for further details on specific fields. The next section of the disclosure form asks about the customer, including the customer type, their name and installation address, and contact information. You will see that the state is hard-coded as Illinois and can't be edited. You will also be asked to indicate the customer's electric utility. If the customer's utility is a municipal utility or a rural electric co-op, you will be prompted to provide the name. You can hit Save and Continue and move on with the form. The next section of the disclosure form asks for information about the project seller and installer of the system. You can autofill this section using the approved vendor contact information if the project seller is the same as the approved vendor. If the name used for marketing is different than the company's legal name, please provide the name used for marketing, as this is the one customers would be familiar with. If the installer is not known at this time, you will be asked to provide 3 potential installers. The legal name is required for any known project installer, while only the marketing name is required for the 3 suggestions. If the installer is known at this time, you will again have the opportunity to autofill using the approved vendor's contact information if the approved vendor is the same as the installer. The next section of the disclosure form asks for project purchase information. At this point, you should indicate the various payments owed to the seller for the project and when those payments are due. If any of the fields for a payment are not applicable, You will still need to enter 0 instead of leaving it blank, as you will receive an error message if you try to leave it blank. The project purchase price will automatically be calculated based on payments. Be sure not to include the $ sign in the field, as that value will not be accepted and you will receive an error message. The next section is the fees and total cost section. The conditional and non-conditional fees are broken out separately in the new disclosure forms to allow for the summation of non-conditional fees with other costs. Fees that are known to apply will be entered first, followed by conditional fees that may apply depending on circumstances, such as late payment fees or return check fees. There will be a chance to indicate if and when these conditional fees apply. In the final PDF of the disclosure form, the costs and fees will be listed out separately and then totaled up. The values that are known to apply will be automatically incorporated into the total cost of the project the way it has been here, where the $1,200 non-conditional fees were added to the $60,000 purchase price of the system. Other fees that may apply will be itemized in a separate table and not included in the total cost of the project. The fee section will also now include a question regarding the collateral fee required by the approved vendor to ensure performance under the REC contract. If the approved vendor plans to charge a collateral fee to the customer or withhold part of the customer's REC incentive payment, they will need to indicate that in the disclosure form. If that is the case, they will also need to indicate the fee type, the amount of collateral fee, and the estimated date for return and conditions for return of collateral fee. It is important to understand that a withheld fee will not be included in the total cost of the project, but a charge as a fee type will be added to the total cost of the project. You will see now that the $1,000 charges a fee collateral fee has been added to the total cost of the project up above. The next section will be dedicated to the Illinois Shines incentive payment and asks for the expected value of the REC payment to the approved vendor and the amount that will be passed on to the customer. You should use the REC prices and the formula for calculating the total REC payment of an energized system under a 15-year REC delivery contract, which can be found in the program guidebook. If an AV is withholding part of the REC incentive payment for collateral, do not include that amount in the value passed on to the customer. This section also addresses whether the project is contingent upon selection for Illinois Shines and the timeframe in which the approved vendor will submit the application. If the project is not contingent upon selection for Illinois Shines, select no. And also indicate if the pricing terms will change if the project is not selected for Illinois Shines. The next section covers project installation timing. The project installation timing can be estimated. Please provide either the estimated date or the days from when the contract is signed. You will also be required to provide the estimated date for the seller to furnish a mechanics lien waiver and select which party is responsible for submitting a project interconnection application to the utility. For example, it can be the seller, approved vendor, installer, or customer. Next section concerns the solar panel system being installed for the customer. This includes the system size, the mounting type, and the gross annual electricity production in kilowatt hours from the project in the first year. Be sure to have this information ready when filling out the form. The first year production and AC system size will be used to calculate the 15-year capacity factor, which can be found here. The capacity factor will help customers understand how well the solar project will perform relative to other projects in the program. The gross annual electricity production field will also contribute to a calculation on the PDF estimating the value of the electricity that the solar project will generate over the 15-year contract. Following section will ask you to indicate whether an application will be submitted for the Smart Inverter rebate, also known as the DG rebate, depending on the customer's utility selection in section 1. This rebate payment is separate from rec payments under Illinois Shines. However, it is required that you disclose this information to the customer. If an application for the DG Smart Inverter rebate will be submitted to ComEd or Ameren, indicate yes. And indicate the rebate amount and who keeps the rebate payment. The section titled Project Operations, Maintenance, Warranties, and Guarantees covers disclosures to the customer about whether project maintenance is included and information about their warranties, including issues related to improper installation, a manufacturer's warranty, and insurance included for loss or damage to the project. If the customer has warranties provided, please be prepared to provide information on how many years it is included and who is responsible. For example, you can select seller, approved vendor, or installer. The next section addresses additional terms and disclosures. This is the section where you would enter terms and conditions that are outlined in the customer's contract that are pertinent to understanding their system installation, pricing, or other information related to the project that has not been covered by the previous sections of the disclosure form. The If You Move section would be the terms customers can expect to see in their contract to transfer ownership of the system and by the final section of the disclosure form, you will have entered all the information that is required. Once you click Submit and Download, you cannot make any changes to the disclosure form. So make sure all the information provided is accurate and complete. After downloading the form must be signed by the customer and uploaded or sent to the customer for electronic signature via the Illinois Shines program portal. To upload a wet signed form to the portal at a later date, you would toggle over to the View Form, where you'll be able to view your created disclosure forms and upload the signed PDF. In conclusion, the Illinois Shines Adjustable Block Program DG Purchase Disclosure Form is an essential document that must be filled out accurately and completely on behalf of your customers to participate in the Illinois Shines program. By following the instructions in this video, you can ensure that your customer's application is processed quickly and efficiently, and that they can start enjoying the benefits of the Illinois Shines program. If you have any questions about completing disclosure forms on the portal, please reference the portal help guide on the Illinois Shines program website. Additionally, you may always reach out to the program administrator at admin@illinoisabp.com for additional questions. Thank you for watching.
Hello, and welcome to this instructional video on completing the new Illinois Shines Community Solar Disclosure Form. As an approved vendor designee, you'll complete this form for each prospective subscriber in the Illinois Shines program. An assigned disclosure form is required prior to signing a subscription agreement or contract. The form is organized into 10 sections on the portal, and you'll be asked to walk through each section before moving on to the next. You can keep track of your progress using the status bars on the right. And you'll be able to revisit sections and resume progress prior to submitting the form. Required fields will be marked with an asterisk, and we've provided helper text in the fields to help inform form entries and also guide data validations. If your data validation does not pass, you'll need to correct the value before moving on to the next section. Conditional fields will determine the resulting information shown in the disclosure form. And please consult the program guidebook and the portal help guides for further details on specific fields. Now let's get started by opening up the form. If you're a vendor or designee, you're going to go to the dropdown and select Create CS. And at this point, you should be able to see a form ID at the top of your form, as well as a vendor ID. This first section just asks for basic information, such as the project name and whether or not the disclosure form PDF should be exported in Spanish. For the sake of this walkthrough, we are going to be filling out a TBD form. If you did have a project application available, you would select it from this dropdown. Since we don't, we're going to enter the project name here. And I'd also like to note at this time that TBD forms are prohibited for community-driven community solar projects. So let's move on to the next section, which is subscriber contact information. You can see that you'll be asked for the subscriber name. You'll also be asked for their address, as well as their phone and email, their utility, and their utility account number. The next section is for the community solar provider contact information. You'll be asked for the legal name, if there's a different name used for marketing, as well as contact information. The next section is for subscription information. You'll be asked to enter the subscription size, whether there is a guaranteed minimum level of electricity production. If yes, you'll be asked for additional details. You'll be asked for the estimated date when the subscriber will start receiving the bill credits. And you'll also be asked for the estimated first year annual electricity production for the subscription, as well as the term of the subscription. Moving on to the next section, which is for rate and payment information. As you can see here, there's 7 options in the dropdown. Depending on which option is selected, you'll be asked for additional information. If you do not see a subscription type here that matches the subscription, you can select none, and you'll be asked for more information on the method or formula for calculating the payment amount. You'll also be asked about the format of the bill, whether any deposit or down payment is required, the frequency of payments, and whether or not the payment will be administered through the subscriber utility bill. If no is selected, you'll be asked to provide more information. Before moving on to the next section, I did want to highlight how these 2 sections, Section 5, subscription information, and Section 6, rate and payment information, will be used to calculate the first year savings for the subscriber. I'm going to go ahead and revisit this section for subscription information. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull over the Community Solar Disclosure Form PDF, which shows the savings section. So as you can see here, inputs from the subscription section, such as the first year production of electricity, it will then be multiplied by the bill crediting rate to give you the estimated bill credits for the first year. Subscription fee, which was entered into the rate and payment section, will be used to calculate the estimated subscription payments. These 2 values will then be subtracted to then give you the estimated total savings for the first year. Moving on to the next section, which is early termination of subscription. You'll be asked whether or not there's additional circumstances that allow for early termination other than moving outside your electric service utility territory. You'll also be asked if the CS provider will impose a fee for termination. If yes is selected, you'll be asked for more information. Whether advance notice is required. If yes, you'll be asked for more information. The next section is any other fees and costs. For example, a late payment fee, you would enter that here. You'd enter the amount and when it would be applicable. Moving on to the next section, additional terms and disclosures. If it does require service from an alternative retail electric supplier, you would select yes, and you would be asked for the name of the supplier as well as the energy supply rate. You'll also be asked in this section if the subscription offer requires the community solar provider to act as the customer's agent to manage their electric utility account. And then we also have a section for any additional details and explanatory information on the subscription. At this point, you're ready to submit and download. Please note that once you do so, you will be unable to make any changes to the form, and it will be available to access on your dashboard by searching the form ID. After downloading the form, you must have it signed by a subscriber and upload it or sent to the subscriber for electronic signature. In conclusion, the Illinois Shines Community Solar Disclosure Form is an essential document that must be filled out accurately and completely for your subscribers to participate in the Illinois Shines program. By following the instructions provided in the video, you can ensure that your subscriber is on their way to start enjoying the benefits of community solar. And if you have any questions about completing the disclosure form on the portal, please reference the portal help guide on the Illinois Shines program website. And as always, you may reach out to the program administrator at admin@illinoisabp.com for additional questions. Thank you for watching.
Thank you to Jess and Julie. And I think we're going to take a look at some sample PDFs right now. So let me get these ready to take a look at. Okay, Julie, would you like to lead off with the project purchase DF sample we've got?
Yeah, so we did want to show a sample of what the PDF will look like with some of the changes we highlighted. If you want to scroll down, Mike, you can see some of the standard information around contact information, project seller and installer. You'll see the addition of that collateral charge and possible refund section and how the fees section has been reorganized. You'll see the addition of the project performance efficiency graph and how that will look in the PDF. As well as the DG rebate section. And finally, the updated value of electricity and savings estimate. So overall, the disclosure form should be well organized and simpler for customers to understand. And also keep in mind that the videos we showed earlier are resources that are going to live on the program website.
Great, thank you, Julie. And Jess, can we ask you to speak to the community solar disclosure form that everybody should now be seeing?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Mike. So yeah, this is the community solar disclosure form PDF. As you can see, the contact information is at the top. If a project application was selected, you would see the project information populated below it. The next section is for subscription information, and then we have the new clarified rate and payment information table. And then this also includes the authorization to manage the utility account if that option is selected. I do just want to call out that there are different dynamic, elements to the form, so they may not all be showing up here at this time. The early termination, the Aries section, if that is required. And then lastly, the new savings section at the end, followed by any additional information here.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Mike. So now I'm going to hand it over to Felicia, who will go over the overview of API and CSV functionality.
Hi, everyone. My name is Felicia. I am a product manager for Distributed Energy Resources Division here at Energy Solutions. I am pleased to announce the CSV and API functionality to support the streamlining of your business and operations. Next slide. The CSV functionality is something that we're extending from the existing portal. Similar to the current setup, there are 4 templates available: DG purchase, DG lease, PPA, and the community solar form. Each of these templates includes all of the fields, indication of their conditionality, and data validations needed in order to complete a form. If there's an error, once you upload that template, the error messages will be provided, and you can correct the templates and re-upload. On the API, so the API allows users to connect with the disclosure form interface without going through the portal. Currently, we have an open beta testing environment and working group where we're sharing updated documentation and answering support questions on getting integrated with the current beta environment and the current disclosure form API. We will be announcing updates to documentation this afternoon. So if you're not already in the working group, please email the admin email address to get into that email list so you can get access to that documentation and support on your integration efforts. And then finally, next week, we will be hosting 2 working hour sessions to go over the API launch plan and any other questions to prepare for June 1st. And I think I'll pass it back to Matt.
Thanks, Felicia. Next up, we'll talk a little bit about general announcements and reminders. Next slide, please. So just as a reminder, for DG, old disclosure forms will not be available for creation in the portal after May 31st. So ABs and designees should have already started old disclosure forms and for submission pathways, and June 1st then would be the cutover date for new disclosure forms for distributed generation. As many of you probably saw earlier today, there was an announcement from the program that the leniency period for community solar has been extended through June 29th. So that means the cutover date for new disclosure forms for community solar is now June 30th. Next slide, please. Lastly, we just wanted to mention the additional stakeholder support that we're putting together. We have expanded office hours on these dates and times. We encourage you all to participate. Additionally, here's our contact information. Please reach out with questions either through phone or through email. And then finally, we are developing some additional customer support documentation that will go on the website, including some annotated disclosure forms, helping consumers understand the disclosure form needs and purposes, as well as some FAQs. And then additionally, the program's brochures, which are pre-appended to disclosure forms, have been updated, including the guide to going solar flyer, which is only attached to DG offers that include a pass-through rec incentive. I'll now hand it back to Mike to facilitate our Q&A segment.
Great. Thank you, Matt and Felicia, Julie, and Jess, our presenters, and we'll be acknowledging the agency here as well, too. We want to thank everybody who's joined today and who has submitted some wonderful questions. So we want to take some time to review those. I want to begin with questions that have been answered, very thoughtful questions. So you'll hear our appreciation as we share this information more widely with the audience. So first one I want to share is if a new disclosure form needs to be created between part 1 and part 2, and the original disclosure form was the prior version, which version of the disclosure form will now be needed? And the agency says that's a great question. We're still confirming which options will be possible after the new disclosure form launch, and we'll be releasing additional information on that topic that was referred to as some of our in-flight scenarios. So more to come on that, and we thank you for that question. Next one is the DG rebate an optional field? And the answer from the agency is yes, there will be an opportunity for the AV or designee to enter whether or not the project will take the DG rebate. If not, further questions will not be asked about the rebate, and that info will not appear on the DF. The next question, how do the auto-calculated fields work if we're building the disclosure form outside of the platform using the API? And the answer is that all disclosure form fields should be accessible through the GET functions of the API. This would be reflected in the updated documentation. Matt mentioned some correspondence earlier, and we'll have further information, including the updated developer's guide to the market very shortly. Here's another one. It's not uncommon for a customer to sign an initial disclosure form prior to a solar contract, then be required to sign a second disclosure form to correct or update some aspect of the project. In these cases, most of the time, only a few data points might change between the first disclosure form and the second. Has the Illinois Shines program administrator or program considered allowing for a contractor to duplicate an original form and allow for a quick edit and resend of the new form? That would save a tremendous amount of time for contractors. The response is that, thank you for the question. There was previously a portal option to generate a new disclosure form based on a previous disclosure form, essentially duplicating the information, but with a new disclosure form ID number. We do intend to offer this functionality again. We may need to confirm with the program administrator staff on timing for this in the Q&A section. Is there anyone, perhaps Felicia, in position to address that now? Or is that something that we'll huddle and can return an answer post-webinar? I'll give you the floor if you might share on that.
Thanks, Mike. I think it's definitely something that where the details will have to provide in later communications, but the features in the backlog, so it's on our list.
Great. Thank you, Felicia. And I made a reference there as well to the Q&A being published after this webinar, as we do with each of those. So just an announcement there, more to come. I'll continue with questions. Again, a number of great questions. Follow-up question on the SD form API. Will the DG API be available on June 1st, or will only the CSV import be available? And the answer is the CSV import will be available on June 1. The API for the DG forms will not be available on June 1, but will commence through a working group soon after. So watch for more information regarding a DG working group. We've gotten a couple questions here. Next question. I currently list fees due to both us as the vendor and our partner broker. If fees are listed in the required fees section, will it separate who is to be paid or not? And the answer is there will be an option to list fees with descriptions and amounts both in the required fees and other fee sections. The description would be the best area to describe where fees are owed. Keep in mind this disclosure form is not meant to be an invoice. Great question, and thank you. Next one. Currently, the field for estimated rec payment, we type TBD. Can we continue this process? The answer is that this is a calculated field in the form, so it will be automatically filled in the portal and generated on the PDF form. Next question. Has there been any thought to add the ability to create a template to start the document? Much of the general information remains the same from project to project, and this could save a great deal of time if the information could be pre-filled. The agency's response is that we hadn't previously considered that, but can discuss that with the team. So thank you. Additionally, the use of the CSV upload feature may be best for now for these types of scenarios to speed up that process of large volumes. So thank you for that question and to the agency for that response. If we are getting complaints about the leniency period, who or where can we refer these complaints to? And the answer from the agency is please send concerns to the program administrator at admin@illinoisabp.com. That address is always open for questions, feedback, concerns. So thank you for the agency reiterating that. Next one, would it be possible for the portal to CC, I assume that means copy the sender of the disclosure form on the email with the e-signature request? That would be very helpful to validate to the contractor that the email did successfully get delivered. And the agency replies, thank you for the feedback. That is helpful. And we'll take that back to the team with an understanding that that could be beneficial. So thank you. And by the way, if any of our panelists or the agency wish to jump in on any questions, I know I'm reading a lot based on the high volume, but just let me know and I'm happy to pause so you can do that. Okay, next one. Can the disclosure form be signed on the same day as the solar contract as long as it is signed first? To which the agency responds, yes, as long as the disclosure form is signed before the customer contract, that's acceptable. Next question, is the CSV upload template and process fully functional for the new community solar disclosure forms? Is there a test area available for this capability at this time? And the response is this process will be fully functional on June 1 for both DG and CS forms. There's not currently a test area available, but we can look into the possibility of providing templates as we get closer to June 1. So thank you for that question, which we'll have some follow-up on. Continuing on, and again, I'll pause if the panelists wish to share anything. Next question, what should be input from project name and estimated dates for receiving credits if a community solar customer is being added to a wait list and we don't have those details at the moment? And the answer from the agency is that the TBD form is intended to be used when the customer is signing up for a subscription, but the specific project hasn't been determined yet. It's not intended to be used for customers to be put on indefinite wait lists. The TBD disclosure forms, therefore, do require an estimate of the date for the community solar customer to begin receiving community solar bill credits. So good question, and thank you to the agency. Next one, is there a way for community solar designees to fill out a TBD form without a project and without a vendor? And the answer is yes. Felicia, is that anything that there's any additional detail or information that's easy to share now, or something that we can just outline in our response in the post-webinar Q&A about designees filling out a TBD form without a project or vendor?
Yeah, I think it was addressed in the webinar. In the portal, there is an option to select an associated project application with the form. If there is not a project application associated with the disclosure form that you're filling out, you do not need to make a selection and it will proceed as a TBD form. But we will provide that in writing as well in the guides.
Wonderful. Thank you, Felicia. Next one, will the API going live on June 1 create this new disclosure form? Will the interface be updated for the new fields? The answer is yes. The API for CS forms will be available on June 1, and the interface will be updated with the new disclosure forms that you saw on the screen today, including those videos. We'll also be making those videos available individually in addition to being nested in the webinar, and I do apologize for the technical difficulties I had in presenting the first one. Next question, what is the process for creating disclosure forms for customers who are enrolling in community-driven community solar farms where a TBD form is not permitted? And the answer from the agency is that the portal will allow AVs and designees to create either TBD forms or forms that are linked to a specific CS project application. For CDCS projects, the disclosure forms should be linked to that project and pursuant to the earlier guidance. There was a question, I think a follow-up about, can you explain how? And I don't know if that was pursuant to the same question. It looked like a vendor ID was a requirement, and Jess Blue has shared that 9999 can be used as the vendor ID for TBD forms, and that will be enunciated in the Q&A as well. Next question, will the Illinois Shines brochure be included with the traditional community solar disclosure form? The answer is yes. The applicable informational program brochure will be prepended to all disclosure forms. It's a good opportunity to let you know those are being updated. So some new content, new presentation, and you'll see those very shortly in conjunction with the June 1 presentation of the new disclosure forms. Next question, can we get a link to an example of the new community solar disclosure form that was just shared similarly for DG? And the answer is that we'll be sharing those after the presentation on the program website in the next few days. So we'll get those up very shortly, make some final tweaks and make those available to everyone. Is the API only available for CS disclosure forms, not DG forms? And we've shared this bit already, but yes, on June 1, the API will be available for CS disclosure forms. We will have the DG API out as soon as possible thereafter with more information to come. So that is in development, in the works, I should say. Next one, just to confirm, homeowners can still sign either with e-sign or wet sign, correct? And the response is yes, that is correct. Next one, with the extension of the community solar disclosure form leniency period, we assume that includes an extension of the SharePoint workaround. And the response is that the SharePoint workaround is still being retired at the end of May, as previously communicated. Beginning June 1, the CSV should be used instead of the SharePoint workaround. Is there a test site we can use to create the new disclosure forms and use the new portal interface? And the answer from the agency is that unfortunately there will not be a test portal interface available to interact with the new disclosure forms. Next question, the community solar cutover date is end of June 29th specifically. Will we have access to the CSV functionality prior to that date? The answer is yes, the CSV option will be available on June 1. So as a clarification, the leniency period has just been extended for community solar, but the functionality will be available on June 1. And thank you for the question and the answer. We had someone indicate they were having difficulty getting a designees set up and need some support there. So on that item and with all items that can be shared with the program administrator and the agency and can be communicated at admin@illinoisabp.com. The agency has made a note and we'll follow up there. So continue to let us know when we can resolve challenges like that. Next one, to be clear, does the extended community solar leniency period mean that version 1 disclosure forms that were sent to customers prior to June 1 and signed before June 30 will be valid? And the response from the agency is yes, this would be allowed even without the leniency period. Version 1 disclosure forms that were sent for e-signature prior to June 1 can be signed after June 1 and will then appear in the portal as normal. I'm going to pause there. We have a great many questions, but I'm cognizant of the time at 12:59. So we will pledge to respond to questions that were submitted, including those I read, those we didn't get to. But I do want to hand it back to our presenters for some closing remarks here. So I'll share it with Matt, but also want to invite the agency to speak as well too. So Matt, can I give it back to you?
Yeah, thank you, Mike. And thank you so much for everybody who participated, especially all the questions. Real quick, Aaron Ankney, we did get your follow-up specifying which designees you're talking about, so we will reach out to you directly on that. But yes, thank you so much for all the interest. There are a lot more questions that we were able to answer. So we will get to those and develop the answers and get those on the program website as soon as possible. We appreciate your help and your support, and we really appreciate any additional questions, sending them to us, again, at the email address that's in front of you right now, or you can always feel free to call us at the phone number that was listed earlier in the presentation.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks.
And I just want to ask the agency, Rachel Graneman or Audrey Steinbach, would you care to add any closing remarks before we sign off on this webinar?
Yeah, I would just echo the thanks from Matt. We appreciate everybody attending. We appreciate all the great questions, and we'll follow up on the questions that we weren't able to get to this afternoon.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rachel. And thank you all for joining us. Thank you for your participation, attention, and wonderful questions. We look forward to following up and supporting this exciting next phase with disclosure forms in Illinois Shines. Thank you so much.